Hi, Flyleafers. Thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate author Lillie Vale's new book, The SHAADI Set-UP, in conversation with fellow author Rachel Lynn Solomon. I'm Morella, the Events and Social Media Coordinator here at Flyleaf Books. Before we begin, if you have any questions during the event, please put them in the chat or in the Ask a Question tab at the bottom of the screen, and I'll ask them towards the end of the evening. You can find out all about our virtual events by clicking on the link at the top of the screen. If you'd like to make a donation to Flyleaf to help us bring great programs like this one to you in the future, please click the donate button down below. Also, if you'd like to support tonight's authors and Flyleaf, we have copies of Lily's The SHAADI Set-UP and Rachel The X Talk available for purchase on our website. You can just click the button down below. And also, if you're native to Chapel Hill or just local, you can come in and shop our shelves. They're now open 7 days a week. And you can also order the book online. Now, I would like to welcome tonight's authors. Lillie Vale is the author of Lillie Vale is the author of a young adult novel called Small Town Hearts. She writes about complicated and ambitious girls who know what they want, the places we call home, and people we find our way back to, and also the magic we make. She was born in Mumbai. She grew up in Mississippi, Texas, and North Dakota. She now lives in an Indiana college town. The SHAADI Set-UP is her debut novel for adults. She's in conversation tonight with Rachel Lynn Solomon, who writes, tap dances, and collects lipstick in Seattle, Washington. She is the author of the YA novels You'll Miss Me When I'm Gone, Our Years of Maybe, and Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. Her debut adult romance comedy, The X Talk, was published this past spring. I'm now going to minimize myself so we can focus on the authors, but I'll be back in around 40 minutes so we can get on with the Q&A portion. So make sure to submit them in the chat or in the Ask the Question tab.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Lillie, I am so happy to be here talking with you about the SHAADI Set-UP, which I read a while back and I've just been obsessed with ever since then. And congratulations on the release of your first adult romance. And I think the best way to kick this off is just if you could tell everyone a little bit about what they can expect in this book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really excited to be here tonight. Thank you for the great intro, Morella. And thank you, Rachel, for doing this with me. I'm really excited. And this also happens to be my publication day, which makes it doubly special for me. So my name is Lillie Vale, and The SHAADI Set-UP is my debut adult romance novel. It's a slow burn exes to lovers second chance romance between a furniture restorer called Rita Chitnis and her high school sweetheart, Milan Rao, who also happens to be the boy who broke her heart pretty spectacularly 6 years ago. Things aren't really perfect with her current boyfriend, Neil, but they're good enough for right now because she's just interested in, having fun like a lot of people in their 20s are. But her mother is a diehard believer in second chances for her reasons of her own, mysterious reasons, which Rita is not allowed to ask about. And when her mother sets her up with her ex-boyfriend, Milan, who is now a real estate agent, she also ends up volunteering Rita's design skills to help him sell a difficult listing, which is a really hard to sell house. He doesn't have any clue how to design it and sell it and get it in front of the right people. And Rita, of course, is kind of resistant to this idea. She's very begrudgingly agreeing to help him only because she wants to prove how not still in love with him she is, like her mother believes. So she comes up with this really convoluted setup, which is to sign herself and her current boyfriend, Neil, up on the Desi matrimonial dating site, myshaadi.com, which is a fictional website, but for any South Asian Indian readers out there, you might recognize it as a inspiration from the actual website, shaadi.com. So she decides to sign herself and her boyfriend Neil up on this website to prove that he is her perfect match. And there's no way, like zilch, zero chance that her perfect match is Milan. of course, being, you know, a rom-com, you can guess what happens next. He absolutely ends up matching with the wrong guy. There is no chance she ends up matched with Neil. She ends up matched 100% with Milan. And there goes her plan of, you know, proving to everybody that Neil is her perfect guy. So she ends up matched the last person she ever expected. And as the former golden couple, like, they're forced into this professional partnership with a lot of unresolved history between them. Neither of them really got closure, and they're both kind of struggling with the fact that they each have their own different idea of what happened to actually split them up. It's like that phrase, like, there's my truth, there's your truth, and then there's the truth. And in this case, neither one of them knows the truth. They each think that their version of events is exactly what happened, which tends to be, you know, what happens in a lot of relationships where miscommunication is the reason why they break down. And working together, Rita really has to reevaluate what happened between them all those years ago to truly split them up. And she has to really evaluate her mother's motivation in setting them up to begin with, and whether broken things can ever really be fixed. And as time passes, she really has to consider whether, you know, maybe despite her best intentions, maybe my SHAADI had it right after all and gave her her true perfect match.
And that premise is just so phenomenal. And I'm just going to keep holding this up because if you haven't yet seen this book in person, the peach color of the cover is just absolutely gorgeous. And I mean, the two people on the cover are absolutely gorgeous as well. But yeah, just one of my favorite covers. Oh, what? Sorry.
Oh, I said it kind of matches your shirt too.
I know. I did that on purpose. I'm glad that, that it worked. But I remember when the deal for this book was announced, and I just immediately started screaming in your DMs because the idea of being matched with your ex on a dating site is so fun and clever and just the perfect rom-com setup. And the book just 100%, I mean, beyond 100% delivers on that premise. And the chemistry between Rita and Milan from the very beginning is just off the charts. Like, I think my blurb even says that I was like sweating, and because I genuinely was. Like, their chemistry is that good.
So did they just end up hearing that?
I mean, that's one of the fun parts of reading romance is like getting to see those genuine connections that these characters have on the page. So I'm wondering, did they just immediately start sparking when they showed up on the page together? And if not, how did you write such great chemistry between them?
Yeah, I would say they pretty much immediately started sparking. I mean, just the fact that it's a second chance rom-com means there's a ton of unresolved history between them, and neither one has really got closure. And I feel like that's a really potent cocktail of emotion when you come face to face with someone who you haven't seen in many years, and you have this grudge against them, but you're still very much attracted to them. You think you're over them, but, you know, maybe you're not. Maybe you are still very much under them. And yeah, maybe not the best way to phrase that, but
I mean, it's an adult romance. It's you have the freedom.
Yeah, so I mean, I think like the second that they appear in the scene together for the first time, it is when her grandmother and her mother are there, and you have like eyewitnesses, you have an audience, and I mean, what could be worse than like coming face to face with someone who you might probably still have strong feelings for? And I mean, some of those strong feelings could be love, some of them could be animosity, honestly. And I think that's something that Rita is going through very intensely in the moment. She's feeling a lot of different emotions very strongly, and she doesn't really have the space to deal with that or process that, or, you know, just be able to talk normally with Milan, because her mother and her grandmother and later her dad shows up. And it's like this huge family affair, and she doesn't have the time to really get into her feelings and what she's feeling. It's just the horror about seeing him face to face. And I love that you said it was a really hooky, juicy concept, because absolutely it is. But at the same time, I feel like if I went a different direction with it, it could have been like a total nightmare. Like it could either be the best thing that happened to someone or the worst. And I think that creates a ton of like interesting possibilities on the page. So yeah,
right. Well, I
just immediately like, I don't have to try too much with them. They wrote themselves.
That's kind of the best feeling as an author. And I even remember you posted recently on Instagram a snapshot of the acknowledgments of the book that's like, and thank you to none of my exes.
And I meant that.
So one of the key parts of this book, which you mentioned, is that the two of them team up to flip a house. And there's kind of this cool metaphor where, the tagline of the book is a second chance at first love. This is really kind of a classic second chance romance. And they're sort of like giving a house this second chance too, in a way. And I love all the descriptions of Rita's job. She restores furniture and she like searches for antiques and, like gives them new life. And it just like immediately drew me in. From the beginning. And I am so curious what kind of research you had to do for both her job and just the house flipping in general.
Yeah, it didn't start out intentionally as research. What happened was at the beginning of the pandemic, I was watching a lot of HGTV. For some reason, I just got really, really into it. I was watching House Hunters International, Island Life. And, when I exhausted a lot of these like flipping or house buying shows, I moved on to another show, which I didn't know anything about going in, which was called Flea Market Flip. And I don't know if any of you are aware of what this show is, but it's a really cool concept. It's people like competing to make, to give new life and to like love these old pieces of furniture and like upcycle them into something new. And that's something that's also like kind of personal to me because growing up, like my parents were very into like antique stores, flea markets, and finding like old vintage like furniture, like really like these pieces of furniture that were part of history that have so much character. And I love like IKEA furniture. It is very aesthetic. I love going into their stores and like imagining everything I want to buy. And that's something very different from like thrifting or antiquing, where you go in and you don't know what you're going to find. Like it's a literal treasure and you never know like what's going to be there that's going to spark, your creativity. And that's kind of like what Flea Market Flip was for me, because there were so many cool projects on that show about product design. And I actually even saw Adam Silvera in one of like the early seasons on there. And he bought, or someone he was with bought him like a bookshelf or something. And like, that was just a really cool, nerdy YA fangirl moment that I recognized somebody.
How funny.
It was really surreal. Like I kind of had to take a double take and wonder, is it like a doppelganger? I don't know. But it did turn out to be him. And so I was really obsessed with this show. And it was a few months after that I actually got the idea for the SHAADI Set-UP. And I was thinking about this girl who has a complicated relationship with her parents' marriage, which she thinks is not traditionally like a loving marriage, because her parents had an arranged marriage, and she thinks that as a result, her parents' marriage doesn't look like her friends' marriages do, where they're very loving and open and free with each other. And she knows that there's some bad history between her mother and her current boyfriend, Neil's father, where they actually used to kind of be an item back in India. But then his dad broke it off. And I got to thinking about, a girl like this who thinks that things are so broken between her family and between her current boyfriend and between her ex-boyfriend. What kind of parallel could she do for work, for a job that could really complement this emotional wound that she has? And what I came up with was, well, I love Flea Market Flip, and it's all about, broken, unloved pieces of furniture getting a new lease of life. And I thought, hey, why don't I combine these two things together? All the best ideas I ever have are always like two different things. I come up with at two different points in time, and then I just smush them together. And I thought, okay, so she's a furniture restorer. She upcycles this furniture. It's broken, it's unloved, and she's basically rebuilding it into something better and stronger than it was before, which is kind of basically what a second chance romance is. the fact that you didn't get it right the first time, but the second time around, it has a chance to be built better, stronger. It has a foundation that's going to last you. And that's kind of how I came up with her job and her career and all of that. And it all kind of wound up being like research I had done before I even had the concept of the book. So it was inadvertent, but it was time very well spent.
I love that, and I feel like I have a new show to watch
so
now.
Fun. 10 out of 10 recommend.
And so you touched on some of the inspiration for the book, but I would love to know how you came up with the myshaadi.com concept. Was that just, you said it was directly inspired by a real site? What sort of led you to create this great premise that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so I actually really love telling my origin story for this book. So what happened was my best friend met her boyfriend, who she's been with for many, many years, on Tinder. And she's kind of been trying to get me to join as well, because of her great experience. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so, because I mean, I've also heard like a ton of the horror stories. And I was telling my mom about this, and my mom was like, well, why don't you join Tinder? And I was kind of taken aback because I realized she didn't know like what a lot of people do use Tinder for, which is, well, we all know. So, you know, this happened in like a split second. My mind took this a very innocent question about why don't you join Tinder? And I kind of ran with it. And I made this off the cuff comment like 2 seconds later of, imagine if 2 South Asian kids, like they met on Tinder, they had sex on the first date, and then they made like the woeful discovery they want to keep seeing each other. It's not going to be a one and done. It's not a one night stand. And then you want to keep seeing each other and have a relationship. And how do you tell your parents how you met? Because inevitably, that's one of the first questions someone asks you, like, oh, how did you meet? And for some people, it's like work or at a bar or, you know, wherever, or a mutual friend set us up. And in this case, like, are you really going to tell your parents that we met on a dating app, we hooked up, and that's how we met? Like, obviously, you want to concoct some kind of story instead. And the one that she comes up with is obviously the scam of My Shaadi. Let's fake meeting for the first time on this website and like convince our parents. So I kind of, all of this went through my head really, really quickly. And I thought, who are these characters? Like, why would they do this? How have they fallen in love? Why can't they tell their parents, other than, you know, the obvious reasons? Maybe there's some other history between them, between maybe not them themselves, but their families, the previous generation. And suddenly I thought, okay, so I have this like elaborate backstory, and I have like all these other elements going on. And I suddenly realized, you know what? I just need to write this. Like, I have literally come up with a plot of a book I am desperate to read. And that tells me like an idea is good. Like, when it's something that I want to read right now, and I don't want to like wait for someone else to write it. Unfortunately, that does mean I have to write it, which is work for me. But so that's the plus side and the downside, that I have to be the one to write it. But it was a great experience. It turned out great. So I'm really glad I am the one who ended up writing it.
That is such a fantastic origin story. And I definitely relate to the, you know, wanting a book so badly and then, oh no, I have to do the work and write it now. And I'm also a big fan of the like smushing things together and creating a book.
Frankensteining a book together is kind of how I refer to it.
Yeah. Because you're just kind of, I feel like writing, you're just kind of putting together things that you like and things that bring you joy. You know, otherwise, why do it? Like, if it's not something that you like. And yeah, just really writing for yourself first, because it's something exciting. And so, okay, I'm going to be grabbing the cover again because it's just so wonderful. But we have to talk about the dogs, because they're on the cover and they're in the book, and animal characters, I think, are so hard to write. I think there's like such a fine line between making a pet, you know, cute but like sometimes having too much personality to the point where they like know way more than an actual animal would. But you give Harry and Freddie such great personalities. Do you have any advice for writing pets into a book?
Yeah, I really love pets in books, and I really love the dog in your X talk as well. And I really love pets because like I don't have a pet myself. I love dogs. I've never had one of my own because unfortunately growing up my mother was allergic. So I've never had a dog. I did have hermit crabs when I was younger, which I had to convince and beg my parents because obviously never having had a pet, they were like, are you going to take care of it? Is it going to smell? Like, are you going to like force us to take on the responsibilities of keeping these poor creatures alive? And so it was a whole big like thing. I did end up getting quite a few of them when I was in high school. And unfortunately, I learned my lesson when people asked me if you have pets or something. And I was like, yeah, I have crabs, like very innocently. And you can imagine how that went over to the cruel people of high school. I'm
imagining an alternate cover with just like crabs down here now.
Oh yeah. I mean, Freddie, that's Freddie here. He would definitely show his displeasure with a little, like, you know, his little pincers and getting people and like soft, fleshy parts of their hand. Yeah. So for me, I love writing pets for that reason, and I really like showing them as characters. I know a lot of books do show them just kind of like being there. And that's absolutely fine. But for me, I really wanted to show these pets as being Rita's like family, her support system. Like these are people, well, not people. I'm humanizing them, but these are animals that she really values and trusts their judgment. And we see that with Harry, who is this one right here. He kind of doesn't like her current boyfriend, Neil. He barks at him all the time, even though he sees him regularly. Every time Neil walks through the door, Harry like goes off and acts like he has no clue who this man is and why he's in Rita's house. Whereas when he meets Milan for the first time, Rita is bracing herself for him to start barking because she's basing this assumption on how he treats Neil. But Harry is very sweet with Milan. Like he's wagging his tail, licking his hand, and Milan is like very effusive in his adoration for this little dog. And I feel like that was very telling for not just Rita to, you know, file that little nugget of knowledge away that, hey, my dog, a good judge of character, as most dogs are, has kind of this problem with Neil, but he has accepted and loved Milan right from the start. And that was kind of a cue, not just to her, but also to the reader as well, to make this connection between, hey, maybe Milan is the guy for her, because clearly if a dog thinks so. So yeah, my advice for writing pets into books is it really depends on how big a role you want them to play in the story. If you just want them to be cute and fun and lovable and cuddly, it's basically as much or as little as you want or what your editor lets you get away with. But if you want them to like really play a role in the story, like find a way for them to be a catalyst to bring your main characters, these love interests, into either a romantic moment or into some kind of conflict. And, you know, again, going back to the fact it's a second chance romance, Rita has a lot of complicated feelings about Milan, about how they broke up. And so she's kind of not sure whether they're going to make it again, whether they're going to, you know, actually pull it off and last the second time around if she gives him this chance. And again, a cue that we get through one of the dogs is the other dog, Freddie, is very standoffish. He's kind of pretentious. He likes belly scratches and head rubs, but he pretends not to because he thinks he's above it. He's very, he's not a dog that is very, he's not as charming as his brother Harry, who is very, very effusive and charming and bubbly and very, all over you. He's a dog, very easy to love. Freddie is not like that. It takes him a while to let people in by letting his guard down. And there's a scene several scenes actually, where Milan is kind of coaxing Freddie to get used to him, to accept him, to be his friend. And Rita notices every time this happens, she logs it away, that Milan isn't giving up. He's sticking it out, and he's basically giving Freddie every reason to trust him. And that's, again, another cue. Like, this is Freddie being the catalyst for Rita to start trusting Milan the way that Freddie is starting to trust Milan. So, I mean, definitely if you write pets and you want them to be a character in and of themselves with a very distinct personality, I would say definitely try and make sure that they are they're not just there to be like a piece of furniture or just there to be cute. Like, they're definitely there to bring your characters together. And
that's one of my favorite things, is when like the dog immediately knows who the right love interest is, or the dog is super grumpy with everyone else, but they are just completely soft for the love interest. And then like when the hero just turns into a totally different person around a dog, like,
yeah.
Love that.
It's the best. No, I was just agreeing with you. Like, it's absolutely the best.
For sure. And so we've talked a lot about the tropes in this book. So you have second chance romance, enemies to lovers, because, they have a lot of unsolved issues from their past, and they are kind of at each other's throats at the beginning. And then forced proximity, because they are working on this house together. So it's really like you just kind of checked all these boxes of my personal favorite tropes. I would love to know what are some of your favorite tropes, and if there are some that you're dying to write but haven't yet.
Yeah, so in my upcoming YA rom-com, it's called Beauty and the Beishram, I am actually getting to write a trope that I have long wanted to write, which is fake dating, which is very hooky and juicy for, very obvious reasons, that you are fake dating someone who you don't already have that relationship with, and you have to like fake all these cutesy moments, and behind the scenes, maybe you're not that close, maybe you're complete strangers, or alternately, maybe you have like a history between each other. And in this book, that's definitely the case, because they are rivals to lovers. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I completely flubbed on that. I meant to say my next adult title, which is the fake dating one, and that's called The Decoy Girlfriend. And in that one, it's about a author who is caught impersonating her movie star lookalike, and she's blackmailed into taking her place, including in dating the actress's very hunky co-star boyfriend. So that is the fake dating one, which I have no idea why that one took me so long to write, because, I mean, honestly, fake dating, it's like chef's kiss. I love it. I don't know why it took me that long to write that trope. And my brain is scrambled eggs. Again, I apologize for that confusion. I completely got those two titles mixed up in my head. This is what a pub day does to an author's brain. But yeah, and then, so that's the fake dating trope. And then in my upcoming YA, which is Beauty and the Beishram, which is a gender bent rivals to lovers, that is a trope I was also really excited to write, because rivals to lovers, like, what's not to love? It's like very similar, I think, to exes to lovers, in that you have a history, you have a lot of sizzling off the charts banter, and it's just like really fun and juicy to get into, because you have all these reasons to not like each other. And if you're anything like the characters in Beauty and the Beishram, like, you have a list. My main character has a grudge list of everything that her love interest does to annoy her, irritate her, or one-up her. And she has every intention of getting her revenge. And as far as tropes I haven't written yet, but would like to, I think it'd be really fun to write a friends to lovers, which is one trope that I've kind of had in the back of my mind for a long time. I just haven't quite had the characters pop into my head yet. Like, nothing has materialized that would make me Frankenstein things together and think, yeah, that's the trope that's perfect for these characters and this world. So I definitely want to write that. And for some reason, maybe someone should take away my romance author card, because I haven't written there's only one bed yet. And I feel like that's one thing that like everyone has done. And I feel like I'm very much in the minority here, where I haven't yet come up with a reason for this to happen. And I feel like maybe I could just like shoehorn it into pretty much any book. But for some reason, I just haven't gotten around to it. And I mean, maybe that's the next trope on my authorial bucket list.
That's so funny. I feel like we balance each other out because I have it in my like three. I think I have it in 3 books, including ones that are coming up. So,
did that happen like naturally, or did you make it happen?
I think a couple of them were organic, but I mean, probably in some weird part of my brain that's just like constantly obsessed with only one bed. It's just always looking for a way for that one to come out. But I will definitely need both your next YA and adult immediately, because they just sound so great. And that kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about next, which was the differences between writing YA and writing adult. So your first book, Small Town Hearts, came out in 2019, and that was YA. And then your adult debut just came out today, and you have both adult and YAs under contract. So what has it been like writing in both age categories, and what have been the biggest differences and similarities?
Yeah, so like you mentioned Small Town Hearts, which came out in 2019. That was my first YA novel, but it was a YA novel that featured older teenagers. So I would definitely say it's for upper YA, because the characters are all over 18. They're out of high school. The main characters have a lot more freedom than a character in high school might have. So the differences between upper YA for my first book and the SHAADI Set-Ups being, you know, full-fledged adult were not so significant, actually. But between the SHAADI Set-Up and Beauty and the Base Room, which is my next upcoming novel, which is YA, the characters in that book are they're 16 and 17. So that is very much still in high school. So obviously school, family, a lot of that plays a huge role in the story, which we didn't see so much to that extent in my previous 2 novels. And a lot of that is just, you know, the age, because at 16, maybe you're not driving yet. Maybe you just got your learner's permit. Maybe you just got your driver's license, and there's still, you know, people to ask for permission. You have to ask a parent or guardian, can I go here? And if they say no, you know, that's the end of it. For Rita, she wants to do whatever she wants, and there's no one to say no to her. And I think when I'm writing characters who are still in high school, and I will say there is a difference between, you know, YA that is post-high school, like shortly after graduation, versus characters still in high school. A lot of that is, you know, it's just a different transition. The milestone of graduation kind of pushes characters into being slightly more adult, but not quite there yet. And I think that's, you know, something that is also a huge difference between my YA and my adult, is that when a character is in high school, they kind of know who they are, but not really. They're still figuring it out. They're making mistakes. They're learning as they go. And they're kind of just thinking about who they are in high school. Or at least if you're anything like me, when I was in high school, I was just, you know, thinking, who am I right in this moment? Who am I for the next 4 years? Who am I as a senior? Who am I until I graduate? You know, and I'm thinking of myself in this very like defined role as a student, as someone who's under 18. Whereas when, you know, you're an adult, you have a much better idea of who you are. Now Rita, she has the idea of who she is, but she's not thinking just in the moment. She's thinking more about, who do I want to be for the rest of my life? What do I want out of my life? And these weren't questions that my younger characters in either of my YAs really necessarily questioned. That's not something that I questioned until I was an adult myself. And I mean, there are days when I still don't feel quite like a full adult, maybe like 3/4 of the way there. And that's kind of, you know, the way that Rita feels too, because while she is an adult, she is still kind of facing insecurities about her career. It's a fledgling business. She's doing well, but it's still, you know, very young. She's just starting out. She has insecurities about love. She likes this guy, Neil, that she's currently with, but then she has feelings for Milan, who she has a past with. And she's like very torn between, you know, do I want to give Milan a chance or not? Do I want to stay with Neil? Do I want to see this setup through? This very wild, ridiculous, convoluted thing I came up with. Do I want to see it through, or do I want to call it quits? So and I mean, a lot of that is also stuff I think you might see in younger characters, like grappling with those decisions. And I think part of that is also, you know, Rita is, she doesn't quite feel like a full adult yet. So I think that's something that my characters kind of share. So while there are definite differences in like the freedom in YA versus adult, there's still a lot of things that I think do have crossover appeal. And I think one of them is like, you know, figuring out who you are. There are characters in adult books who absolutely know 100% who they are. And I admire that so much. But for me, my characters usually still kind of struggle with that.
I can definitely relate to that. And I think what you said about YA being all about like who you are in high school, and adult is kind of looking outward and like, who am I to the world? Like, what am I contributing? That's right. A lot of what I think about too.
Yeah, and I know you have a lot of experience with that yourself because you also write YA and adult. So you can probably speak to that better than I can.
No, I mean, you honestly, like, I was just kind of nodding along with everything you said because I think it's so true. It's, you know, the independence that your characters have in adult, and just the kind of questions of where they fit in the world, and kind of answering these bigger, like, I don't know, kind of unpacking these bigger mysteries about themselves and kind of what they want to be. I mean, yeah, like the biggest thing that I've done that was feeling like an adult was like getting this plant. Like, I don't know what being an adult is like. And I think that all my characters are grappling with that too. So I love like how to adult as as a subplot in romance novels. I think it's this new almost subgenre of like millennial romance novels, and I'm sure very soon we'll start seeing some really like solidly Gen Z romance novels. Actually, I know of a couple that are written by Gen Z authors and that have characters that would fit into that. And it's just so interesting because it's, you know, I think that, I mean, even like 10 years ago, so much of the emphasis in a romance novel was about like marriage and kids. And that just doesn't come up for so many characters. Like, so you can have a romance novel that ends with a happily ever after or a happy for now that doesn't involve an engagement at all.
Right. And I mean, I think that also speaks a lot to the times that we live in right now. Like, there's articles all the time about, you know, how millennials aren't having kids, how millennials aren't moving out of their parents' house, how they can't afford a lot of housing. And it's really interesting that all of these issues, these very contemporary issues, have found their way into romance books right now, where, you know, like you said, it's not, you know, marriage, children, like it's not the be all and end all. It's not every single person or main character's goal. And while the SHAADI Set-UP did have a epilogue that said 3 years later they're engaged and they do plan to get married, I definitely don't think that is a must for romance anymore. And in fact, like I really appreciate that it's not, as, you know, someone in their 20s who is also unmarried. So I do appreciate that we see a lot of that, the current issues, very topical things reflected right now in our fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's going to be so interesting to see it continue to evolve. I feel like romance is.
I can't wait to see it.
I know. Well, I feel like romance is really at the forefront of like, it's just so progressive, and I feel like it's just leagues ahead of so many other forms of media. Mm-hmm. And I know we're probably getting close to questions, but one thing that I again, because I just can't stop stroking this cover. It really is one of my favorite romance covers, and it's so perfect for the book. And anyone who has not gotten it yet, again, you just have to see it in person. It's so beautiful. I would love to know what the cover design process was like for you. Did did this beauty just show up in your inbox one day, or what? How did you arrive at this?
Yeah. So I have always wanted an illustrated cover, and I did not get that for my first book. So I was thrilled when I had it for this one, and I wound up with this beauty you see before you today. And, you know, shameless self-promotion, definitely go buy it so you can creepily stroke it like I am right now. Yeah, so I got a preliminary sketch, and I gave some feedback on it. And the design team and the cover artists were really great about incorporating some of my suggestions. Like originally the dogs weren't on the cover, and I asked for them to be included because, you know, as I mentioned before, they're such a huge part of the story, and, you know, very specifically, they played a huge catalyst role in getting Rita and Milan together. So I definitely wanted them to have their time on the cover. I wanted them to have their, you know, their time to shine, basically, because they definitely deserve it. I mean, they worked hard getting these two kids together, even though that Rita was resisting all the way. So after we kind of hammered out the details of the preliminary sketch, I got the color versions pop into my inbox pretty quickly. And one of them was blue, one of them was like a tealy green, and then one was the peachy orange, which you see before you today, which is obviously the one that we ended up going with. I loved all the colors, but what I really loved about the orange was, at the time, it wasn't a color that I had seen on a lot of romance covers. It seemed very fresh and inviting and fun and just kind of different to the other covers that were out there. And I thought, it's going to look fantastic, either face out or just the spine. Like, it's going to look great. That color is going to pop. So I was very emphatic that I love the peach. And so, and luckily the team agreed too. Like they love that as well. And since then, I have noticed a lot of other covers actually have also had peach, or like this peachy orange, like People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. There's another one by Farah Rashan, which the title I can't remember, but it's also kind of peachy. And The Dating Dare, that one is also a very similar color. So I think that, you know, there was just something like in the water in publishing that it was just zeitgeist, that, you know, everyone suddenly decided they loved this color. And I mean, I love this color, so I love seeing all these other covers out there like mine, but they're sporting this peach look. I just think that's so fantastic. And one of the really cool things that the design team and artists did was they added the little detail of Milan dropping the keys into her hand, which is kind of like, it's a scene in the book where he actually gives her the keys to their house, but also it was just such a cute little detail of him dropping the keys in. There's a little house on the keychain, which you probably can't tell very well right now in the video, but if you see it in person, it's just the most charming, thoughtful little thing. And they completely surprised me with that. And it's also there on the spine. I absolutely love it. I would never have thought to do that myself. So I really love that they thought of it and added it in, and just made my day.
Okay, so we have received a couple of questions from the audience. The first one being, well, the first one you guys kind of answered before, but it was, how was the process of writing adult versus young adult different? So if you had anything else to add.
I mean, I think we basically covered it before, but I mean, again, just like knowing your audience, knowing who you're writing for, the topics of relevancy to teenagers are very different than adults. You have to be very cognizant that what you as an adult writer are writing might be very different to what a teenager is looking for when they read your books. And YA is definitely, you know, adults can and should enjoy it, but it's ultimately definitely for the teens first. So it has to be written with that audience in mind.
The next question is from Kate, and she says, Rita emotionally cheats with Milan while still dating Neil. This sort of thing can easily make a character go from likable to being the worst. Yet I found myself cheering for Rita throughout the entire novel. Do you have any advice for keeping a character likable while they're doing something that may be considered awful?
Yeah, I think when it comes to potentially unlikable behavior, a character needs to have a code. Like there needs to be a line that they will not cross. And I think that's what kind of prevents a character from becoming unlikable or being unrootable. That you kind of, like as a reader, you don't want to lose respect for the character if they break their own code. So I think the important thing to remember is, especially when, and I wouldn't consider this a love triangle exactly. I know people have different interpretations of what a love triangle is. Sometimes it might just be that there happen to be three people who are kind of got their lines tangled. But for me, I think a true love triangle should be where there's actual love involved by all parties. And Rita has made it very clear right from the beginning, she's not in love with Neil. And so while I wouldn't call it a love triangle, I do see the point where emotionally she does have feelings for Milan that she's grappling with while she's dating Neil. And that's why part of Rita's code was she is not going to cheat with Milan. And that's why when she does start to feel these more strong feelings of attraction towards Milan, she does make the decision to end it with Neil. And they have a very respectful, mature breakup. And I think, and while I fully respect, that even perhaps emotional cheating is a deal breaker for some people, I think that Rita sticking to her code, to her morals of not letting it go further than just, having that attraction to someone. She makes it very clear it's not going to go further than attraction while she's still with somebody else, whether she loves this person or not. Like, that would be wrong.
Our next question kind of ties into the beautiful cover. So Julie asks, who is the cover artist?
Yeah, the cover artist is Alex Cabal. You can find their Instagram online. They have the most beautiful art ever. They recently also designed another cover that I love, which is Nafiza Azad's The Wild Ones. It's a really pretty lavender cover. I am dying to read that book. And yeah, like the artist is fantastic.
And one question we always love to ask our authors here at Flyleaf is, what are you currently reading?
I'm currently reading the I have to check. I'm currently I just finished You Have Me at Ola by Alexis Daria, and I'm currently reading People We Meet on Vacation, and I have just ordered The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova, which I'm waiting to get here because I am so hyped for that title. I can't wait. Like, that book also came out today, and it's just like the most gorgeous cover ever. And I read the excerpt and I just fell in love. And I'm also currently reading The Payback's a Witch, which is by Lana Popovic, or Popovich, I'm not sure. That is a Berkeley title. It's a queer witch romance, and I am very, very here for that.
I love that. I either love all of those or I'm dying for them. I think we have very similar taste. I am currently reading, let's see, I just recently finished It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, which I love. I'm just obsessed with anything Tessa Bailey writes, and that one was probably my favorite. Just so, so wonderful.
I totally read that one too, and I forgot the title.
So,
and mentioned it.
so good. And then I'm also reading Finley Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano, which is a like kind of fun murder mystery or like thriller comedy, and having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, that sounds really cool and like very like genre blendy. I love the sound of that.
So we're about to close out the event, so I'd like to end with a few reminders. If you'd like to purchase a copy of Lillie or Rachel's books, you can find them on our website, in our store, or you can click the call to action button on the screen. If you've missed some of our conversation tonight or would like to share it with a friend, you can find the recording on Crowdcast. And finally, please keep an eye out for other upcoming events in our weekly newsletter and on our website. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight and for supporting Flyleaf. Good night.
Night. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.